Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Northwoods Kindred Podcast. Once again, I am Bodvar, the chieftain and Gothi of the Northwoods Kindred. And this podcast is all about Asatru and the Asatru Kindred and everything that just kind of revolves around that topic. Now, if you don't identify as Asatru, if you identify as a Norse pagan or Norse heathen, we're all still pretty close when it comes to that business. And if you're some other level of eclectic heathen or eclectic pagan, that's all awesome too. A lot of the things that we do or the things that I do here, especially this podcast, are going to be applicable to you as well. So stick around and maybe listen to this one. Today we're going to talk about ritual, just the case for ritual, just getting out and doing ritual as opposed to just lighting a candle and walking away. Let's get out there and let's make some magic happen. So before we get into it, I want to say thank you to my patrons. The patrons who we don't prompt it and we didn't do a lot of advertising or anything, but people just found their way to our Patreon, which we really just kind of created to be a placeholder just to make sure nobody created one in our name. But we created it just for that purpose, and then people found it and came over and they started joining and making their monthly contributions, and we do a pretty good job of maintaining our side of that. But they do put up with a little bit of learning curve from us, with contact, getting a hold of us and doing that kind of stuff. So they do got to put up with a little bit because we are new at this. And I just want to say thank you to them for bearing with us and helping us kind of get going and even helping us by giving us information that helps us, build a better patron page anyway. Also, this podcast is sponsored by my own shop, my own, craft wares shop, Survival Hardware. So check it out, survivalhardwarellc.com. And there's a lot of really cool stuff in there that's handmade by myself and my Gija Skogel. And we didn't do a lot last year. Last year we put so much effort into building the YouTube channel and working on building an audience over on the TikTok side and engaging with people on Facebook and Instagram. And so we didn't put a lot of effort into the shop. In fact, I didn't make a single knife last year. I did some other stuff. I built various different things, some rune sets, lots of these Thor's Hammer Fire Strikers. See, it's a Mjolnir, it's a Fire Striker, it's a survival tool, it's everything all in one. So I built a couple of batches of those, and we did a few other things, but I didn't really get out there and kind of dig into building knives like I do. So my intent this year is to really get back into the shop, and I've spent the last couple of days here working on the shop and making it, getting it cleaned up and organized, adding a little more lighting, things like that to really make it work for me. So this podcast today is going to be all about ritual and more about the why. I know that a lot of people are kind of slow to get started on ritual. When I first became Asatru, I guess I had maybe a year on the path, maybe a little longer, and then I found myself in the Kuwaiti desert on my very first deployment. It was a peacetime deployment. We weren't at combat with anybody, but we would go to the desert of Kuwait and train, and then, do the rest of a deployment, float around, hit Thailand, all that kind of stuff. But the first ritual I actually performed was in the desert in Kuwait. And it was me and another pagan. We didn't have anything to offer, so we offered coffee. Because coffee, for one, we love it. It has a lot of value to us. And two, it's what we had, and it had worth where we were at. And, during that particular phase of training and in our life, coffee had value. So we offered coffee. We didn't have a bowlie or any ritual tools, so we used a canteen cup. And then for a hammer for the blessing, I didn't have a hammer, so I used the pop-up flares come in a little metal can, and they have like this little key. It's a T-shaped key that opens the can. So I had one of them little can openers, and it was T-shaped, and I thought, well, that's a good enough Thor's hammer. So we had a Thor's hammer, or a Mjolnir, we had a bowlie, and we had a couple of candles out of survival kits, little stubby candles. So we set out some candles. We did this thing. It's the best we knew how to do. And we did this ritual. And then when we were closing the ritual, we were getting to the end of it. We really didn't know how to open and close it. We were going off of a book, like a little New Agey book that had a ritual in it. We didn't really know how to close it very well, but we just did this ritual and we didn't ask. We were just like, hey, thanks for being our gods, We didn't really know what to do we didn't know the reason to have a ritual, but we just did one because, what are you going to do? We're out there, we got downtime, we got nothing better to do. So we had a little ritual. As we were closing, this sandstorm, they call it a haboob. So this sandstorm was coming in. Oh, you could see it. It's like a wall of sand, kind of like in The Mummy, but not quite as, fantastical. But you can see the wall of sand coming at you. So this wall of sand is coming, and we're like, well, we better do our thing. So when the sandstorms come, you usually crawl into your hooch, your little tent, and cover up with a poncho, and you can usually breathe the air that's underneath you. And because it is sand everywhere. If you're just out there, you're going to get it in every crack and crevice. It's going to get in your lungs, everything. So there's a procedure to deal with it. So we see this haboob coming, and we take the necessary precautions. We just bailed on the ritual, did what we had to do, and when it was over with, we went back out to our ritual space. Oh yeah, the altar we had was just an MRE box flipped up on its end. So we went back to the ritual space, and obviously the candles weren't lit, but the altar was still standing upright, and the boli and everything was still on it, and we had drawn a circle in the sand to create our circle, our space, and that circle was still drawn in the sand. It didn't get filled in. So to me, that was amazing. What it did was, to us, it told us, there might have been something special that happened or some weather anomaly that made that possible, but to us it said, we opened this circle to the gods and we didn't close it, and they protected what was inside like we asked them to. And that was, that was something. That was like real. It wasn't like, oh, please God help me, and then nothing ever happens. This was real. We did a ritual and we got a result, and it was quantifiable. So at that point, there was no looking back. I wonder sometimes about some of the new pagans, if you haven't done a ritual or even been to a ritual and experienced that, kind of what keeps you going. Put that in the comments, actually. Put down in the comments, if you haven't done ritual or haven't been to ritual, what is it that keeps you going? What keeps you motivated to stay on this path if you're not seeing those kind of results? Or are you? Are you seeing those results without doing the rituals? And there's a lot of things that can be called a ritual, and we're going to get into that really detailed here in a minute. All humans have rituals. I have ritual. When I get up in the morning, how I make my coffee, the specific way that I make my coffee is a ritual. The time that I get up, my cold water plunge, all the things that I do on the day or in a day, my morning routine. A routine is a ritual. And the desired result of that ritual is that I can, put myself in the right mindset to operate through the day and be effective and, keep moving the needle forward. That's the object of that ritual. And it works. It works for me. And I assume that everybody has pretty much their own versions of that also. And all religions have rituals. It's not just a heathen or a pagan thing to be a part of a ritualistic gathering or ceremony. It's not just a heathen. It's not just a pagan thing. Catholics have rituals. They dress up in the gown with the big fish hat and all that other stuff that like the Pope wears. Priests have a uniform. Nuns have a uniform. They have rituals. They have light candles. They sing songs. All of that stuff is ritualistic, and it finds its root in paganism. If not Norse and Germanic paganism, then some other form of paganism around the world. So in addition to the rituals, we have our customs and our observances. So those would be our holidays, or things that we customarily observe, like maybe not even religious holidays or religious examples, but like here in America, we celebrate the 4th of July. That's a custom, that's an observance, but it doesn't necessarily have a ritual associated with it. Now, we do here at the Northwoods because the 4th of July just happens to be the birthday of Sveinborn Bwentensen, the founder of Asatru in Iceland. I probably said that wrong. I don't have a good tongue for that. But he's the founder of the Asatru group in Iceland, and his birthday was July 4th. And so we honor him on that day, or on that monthly bloat. We do a bloat just to honor Sveinborn. We've adopted an American custom, an American observance, and we've turned it into an occasion to have a ritual. And that's really what we look for, is we look for what are some opportunities for us to go have a ritual, to go have a ceremony and thank the gods for what they've given us. And that's just one of many examples. Even your birthday, just celebrating your birthday is a ritual. Well, it's a custom or an observance, but the lighting of candles and blowing out the candles is a ritual, and it has pagan origins. So what is ritual for? The best way I could say to really explain a ritual is a system, a method, or a procedure to have an interaction or a conversation with the divine. And I think that would probably work across all religions or across all definitions. But to have a conversation or an interaction with the divine, to prompt the divine to engage with us at our level, or at least at a level that we can understand. And we do that by making offerings in a ceremonial fashion. And in Asatru, or Norse paganism, we have essentially two base ceremonies, and that would be the bloat and the sumbel. In a lot of cases, you'll watch YouTube and you'll see these pagan rituals, and they look, well, spooky and creepy. And that's okay. Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's the vibe you're going for. But other times it's not. And what the beauty of a ritual is, it's actually the power of suggestion. It's the law of attraction. You know, what you will or what you say, you can create in your reality, because we all know that the world is just energy. And how you manipulate that energy and how you interact with that energy defines your world, your base. If I wake up every morning and I'm like, oh, today's going to be a crappy day. I spilled my coffee. How can it get any worse? This is horrible. I hate this day already. I should just go back to bed. Well, that day I have already, by the power of suggestion, I have already created a really crappy day. But if I wake up in the morning and I spill my coffee and I'm like, just a cup of coffee. They're cheap. I can make another one. Get back on track. Get back on to having a good day, and don't let it get to you. You know, don't sweat the small shit. So if you can do that, that's power of suggestion. Now, if we take that and we do it in ritual form, and we go out there and we make an offering, and we offer, and we say, you know, I'm making this offering and I'm asking for your help in this thing. By making this offering and asking for help, you're also taking responsibility for the action. So it's not like we can just say, please give me this thing because I want it. We actually have to go earn it. We have to go get it. Like you don't get something for nothing. But when you go out there and you present an offering to the gods or a sacrifice and say, I'm giving this up and I'm asking for your help. And we don't generally around here ask for things. I'm just using that as an example because I know not a lot of young pagans will ask for stuff, and a lot of times that gets answered. But it's not free from cost. So you have to make some sort of an offering, some sort of a sacrifice in order to even invoke the gods or interest the gods in helping you. Like, why are they going to want to help you if there's nothing in it for them? We do know that our gods like stuff. They like things. They like drinks. They like food. They like weapons. They like toys. They like gold. They like silver. They like apples. They like all these things. And we can offer these things to them in exchange for their help or their companionship, or just to say thank you for the things that they already gave us and the things that we can recognize where they interacted with us in our world, or where they made things happen for us. So it really is an exchange between us and our gods, or us and our ancestors, or even the spirits of the land. The exchange is we give something, we get something, or we get something, we give something back and say thanks. So we're honoring that gift for a gift mentality. And it does say in the Havamal that it is better unasked than to offer so much, or to offer too much. So the idea is that don't bother them all the time. You know, you don't want to always be tugging on their pant legs, saying, Mr. Odin, can you help me with it? Mr. Odin, can you help me with that? Mr. Loki, can you help me with that? Freya, can you help me with this? You know, do something for yourself, because you can wear that out. They do get sick of being constantly annoyed. But nobody gets sick of saying thank you, of often saying thank you. So the real trick to knowing, to having fuel for an offering or for a sacrifice, is to look around and recognize the divine when it happens. Recognize the amazing things that happen that that might have taken some sort of a divine intervention. It doesn't take a miracle or a gigantic change in your life circumstance to realize that you've been interacting with the gods. I mean, a cool example was I'm driving down the road the other day, and we're covered in ice right now here in North Idaho. And I'm going down the road, and this car is just right up my butt, and I'm like, I can't go any faster. My truck tires are getting bald, and I can't go any faster than this or I'm going to lose control. So I just slowed down to the point of being annoying. So this guy punches the gas to go around me, starts spinning down the road beside me, slides off into the ditch, and I just kept on going. There's intervention there. Like, he could have ran into me. He could have knocked me off the road. There was any number of ways that could have gone horribly, horribly wrong. But instead, it ended up being a slow-speed traffic slide-off in a populated area. So nobody got hurt. You have to work a mindset of gratitude and a mindset of recognizing the divine when it happens in your life. And then we have ritual to compensate for that. Now, I know some people don't have ritual, and that baffles me. I don't understand it because I get some of these people, I get some comments from people, and they're like, oh, you're crappy goatee, but these people don't even do ritual. They don't do anything. They just judge people. So I don't give them a lot of my airtime. The thing I don't understand is why. Why wouldn't you do ritual? Because there's a benefit to it. It helps you. If you haven't done it, then I understand. But if you've been to rituals and you know that feeling after a good ritual or a properly performed ritual, we've all heard of the law of attraction. Now, with the law of attraction, it's all the things that you can believe, or the way you think, and the way you the way you talk about stuff that makes it real. So you are attracting to you what you want, or where you put your focus. That's the idea of the law of attraction. So the idea with ritual is it breaks up the bad times, because they're always bad times, but it gives an opportunity to break up the bad times and find some good to go say thank you for. It gives you that kind of that attitude of gratitude, where you get to say, hey, this good thing happened and this good thing happened. This must have been Thor's intervention. Let me go pour out a beer for Thor and tell him thank you for his help. The effort of doing that creates an attitude that brings more of that good into your life and kind of staves off the horrible. But if all you do is you're like, why am I going to pour a beer to Thor? Like, that guy hasn't helped me out, like Loki's my dude, or whatever, but you're not going to do any ritual about it. You are going to invite more of the same. So if you are locked in a cycle of pain and misery and misfortune and discomfort, that's going to continue. But you can break that cycle by finding things to be grateful about and going to the gods and saying, I recognize your intervention and I'm grateful for that. And, pour out some meat or pour out some wine or some beer, and then go on with your day. And I understand that it's super intimidating. And that's why I actually created a flyer, which I will link to below. And also there's a link to it it's on my website. But if you go to survivalhardwarellc.com, it's there. There's a couple of actual flyers, but I have one that's specifically like a handout for the ritual of bloat. So there's the handout that I created. It says bloat, and it's the rituals of Asatru, and it's part of this series. And I haven't really completed the series, but this particular one goes into the bloat and how to do it. And the idea is that I made this, and you can download it for free. I'm not charging anything for it. And it's a quick, brief walkthrough of the bloat structure, how to make an actual sacrifice to the gods. And you can take this and you can do this to Zeus or Methuselah or whoever you want to offer to. I don't really care. The structure is sound, and it's based in the way that we modern pagans have kind of structured it. I think it was originally sort of based on a Wicca structure, and then changed up just enough with the bits and pieces that we could gather from the lore and from the stories and the sagas and the Eddas, and then put together as much as we could to formulate the bloat structure that we use today. And this is the generally accepted structure. And I say that because I've got a kinsman who, before he joined us, he had been, he travels around the world, and he had been to a bloat, like a big public ritual in Iceland. And when he came here and he went to our first ritual, he's like, that's very close to the way they do it in Iceland. Even some of the words you say. And I was like, well, that's kind of the way I learned it, and it's just the way that it's kind of been going around, circulating here in Vinland for a long time. So this is based on that. So it is relatively close to the way that the formal religion does it in Iceland, if you're good with that. But I'm sure that it's very close to the way any formal or larger groups do it that have refined a ritual, and I'm sure they're pretty close to this. But the idea isn't that you grab this flyer and then you adhere to it like it's gospel. The idea is that this gives you a place to start where you can build your own practice and build your own rituals based on a proven standard across, paganism around the world. So also, in addition to the bloat one, which is a free download, I also have frequently asked questions, which is also a free download, and this is for the new pagans among you who just got here. Maybe you got to figure out how to talk to your mom and dad. You got to figure out how to talk to your girlfriend's pops. You got to figure out how to talk to these people, and they're going to ask questions. And there are just some common questions in here that people generally ask. So this will help you to answer them, get you on a good start. Or if it's somebody you don't want to deal with, give it to them and walk away and just let them figure it out on their own. And then if they want more information, there's the link to our website or to our YouTube, and they can come watch these same videos. Who knows? Maybe you'll create an ally in the world by handing them that flyer. So the bloat and the frequently asked questions are there already, free to download. And then I have 9 worlds of Asatru and gods and goddesses of Asatru. So, it'll help you decide who's the right god or goddess to bloat to. But these aren't released yet. They're almost finished, but I had some refinement to do. But eventually I'll let those go too. And probably for a small fee on those. But if not, then at least I'll do a limited time free download for when it's attached to a video or something. So look out for those. Those will be coming out soon as well. So the idea with the bloat is that we are making an offering and we are thanking the god or goddess for their intervention in our lives, or the ancestors, some other deity, the landvetter, whatever we're doing the bloat to, or whomever we're doing it to. It's just the idea is to say thank you. It's not to go out and beg for assistance. Although you can, generally, if I have to ask for assistance, I don't really, for myself, I just kind of try my best. If I ask for anything, I generally just ask for guidance or some sort of inspiration to do the right thing, or like, hey, can you just kind of just watch my back and make sure that I can get this thing done, as opposed to, hey, please help me do this or make this happen. I don't do that. But I do say thank you when it happens or when it works out in my favor. I hope I'm not running long or making it weird the way I say that. But I don't ask specifically for stuff. I don't ask for a new car, or I don't ask for this or that. I just make those things happen on my own. And if there was some like spark of creativity or some unexpected check that showed up in the mail or anything like that, then I thank the gods for their intervention in helping me accomplish my goals. Not for giving me stuff, but for helping me along the way to accomplish the things that I set out to do. That's really where the magic is in it. But I won't say that asking for stuff doesn't work. It does sometimes, and people do it all the time. It's just not my way. It's not how I do things. So the other ritual we have is a sumbel. Now the sumbel is a different kind of ritual, and it's based on a portion of an ancient feast. So what they say in the books is that the chieftain carried the meat around the fire 3 times, and so there's a lot of little like snippets of here and there that we don't really pay a whole lot of attention to, other than the fact that the number 3 was important, because now we do 3 rounds for a sumbel, and the traditional, it was actually a round of drinking at the feast, and a toast was made to Odin, and one to Njord, and one to Freyr, and one to Thor. So there was toasts made to various different gods, and I assume that at different feasts and rituals, they made different toasts to different gods. But one of the toasts that was generally pretty often made was the toast to Bragi. And the Bragi toast is where oaths were sworn and other things were said and done. Taking that, the structure for the modern sumbel is the way we do it and the way I learned it. And I learned it from, I'm sorry to say, the Asatru Alliance in Payson, Arizona, because when I first came into Asatru, I was a member of an Asatru Alliance kindred. Now, the whole kindred since, left the alliance because of all the tomfoolery. But that's where we learned the base of our practice. But even though they're kind of a shit organization, that doesn't mean that that's a shit practice. the way we observe it is the first toast goes to Odin. This is his ritual. So we raise a horn to Odin and we say, welcome to this ritual. Please, have a seat and drink with us, share in our tears and our laughter, and etc. So we open the toast with a toast to Odin, and we pour his drink into the bowly, which sits in the center. And then we have 3 rounds. And the first round that goes around goes to the god or goddess of your choice. Now, I did a whole video on it. I'll link to it here, but it's on YouTube. There's a video on how to do the sumbel. Matter of fact, there's one on the bloat too. So I'll link to those separately or together or whatever. And matter of fact, why don't I just link to the playlist? The playlist is Getting Started in Asatru, and it's got ideas about how to do both of those things. So with the sumbel, the idea with the sumbel is that you do that. First round is to the god or goddess of your choice. The second round is to the fallen. And the third round is open to anything: a boast, a toast, a song, a dance. Now, in the old messages or the old lore or the old text, Braggy's round comes before the round to the fallen. And, the boast, the toast, whatever. That comes before the round to the fallen. But we've found that doing the fallen round last kind of leaves everybody leaving the ritual feeling a little, raw, a little bit bruised because, you're raising a horn to your dead uncle or friend or kinsman or whatever. And so we've switched those from the lore so that we can end on a happy note. We can end on the brag or the toast or the oath or whatever else is happening. A brief note on oaths at sumbel. Generally, it's considered a good tactic to talk to the Gothi or the people that are there before you swear an oath and say, I would like to swear an oath, or I would like to, do this thing at sumbel, because the people present have to accept your oath for it to be a valid oath at sumbel. So if you're going to try and swear an oath, make sure that it's something that you can accomplish, because if you swear an oath to accomplish something and you don't, it affects the luck of everybody who's present. So at least that's generally the accepted way that things go. So I don't want to make it sound too complicated. It's 3 toasts, and then 2 extra toasts that the Gothi or the leader of the sumbel does. And that first one is to Odin, and the last one is to the Landvetter, the Hausvetter, the Whites, the spirits of the land, the Disa, the Tottermen, whatever you want to call them. So that last one is to the spirits of the land and the spirits of the house that have hosted us. And generally with our sumbels, we do those indoors. We might do our sumbels outdoors in the vey around the campfire in the summertime when it's nice and warm and comfortable. But in the winter when it's like now, all of our bloats happen outside, but our sumbels, we keep those inside because it's a long time to just sit there drinking. And we want people to be engaged in the conversation, not engaged in how much it sucks to be out in the freezing cold. So we generally take those indoors. So we have our bloat and our sumbel. And I didn't really cover the bloat structure, but there's only a couple of basic parts to a structure of a bloat. You would obviously lead everybody in, and everybody does that in a different way. If you watch our videos, you'll see when we bloat, I go straight in because I have some prep work to do, and everybody else walks all the way around in a counterclockwise manner as if they're going back in time before they enter into our sacred space. To maybe not all the way back in time, but at least to a world between the worlds where we can commune with the gods and talk to our ancestors and everything as if we were both living and breathing in the same space. So that's kind of the idea behind that. And it's all symbolic. It's all symbolic magic, sympathetic magic, every bit of it. So when that happens, then we generally open the 4 corners. Now, we don't have to do that because we've already dedicated the space, but we do it anyway because we always have new people, and I want them to see the process. So we open the corners, we invite the god, we ask them to bless the offering, and then we share the offering externally and internally by taking a drink. We say thank you, and then there's another little phase there where we can do other things. Now, all the other rituals that you would expect to see, like a wedding or a naming or a blessing of a tool or an object, all that stuff happens at that special spot in the bloat where it's other workings. And then after that, we say thank you, bid them adieu, and then we close the ritual. Generally with just a horn blast. We don't go all the way around and close the 4 corners again because we're almost always working in a dedicated space. I may close all the 4 corners in the case of me setting up impromptu ritual space in the woods or something. Then I may close that out when I'm done. And that's essentially it for a bloat and a sumbel. Now, the only other kind of a ritual that we have would be utaseta, which is a set out. And it's not formally a ritual, but you almost have to approach it as a ritual. You have to approach it as your sacrifice is your preparation, your time, and the things that you do during the ritual. It's not necessarily a sacrifice of mead. Although I recently did a utaseta, a 24-hour fasting utaseta with my son to start his journey into the runes, or into rune study. And so we did 24 hours in our vey, and we fasted. We did bring tea, but it didn't feel right, so we just ended up making tea out of pine needles and rose hips that were growing in the vey. So we used what we already had. It felt a little bit better and a little bit more real. And then, so we had water, but we did fast, so we didn't have any food for 24 hours, and we just slept out there in the vey for the little sleep that we did get. So where that finds its root is it finds its roots in mound sitting, which was a shamanic or maybe even a witchcrafty practice where they would sit on the graves of the dead or on these mounds, and they would communicate with the dead. That would be the idea. And it really might be even the root of the ritual of going to the graveyard and sitting next to somebody's grave and talking to them and having a conversation. Except with the mound sitting, a lot of times that was coupled with some substances, as well as some fasting and some other things to put your body and mind in the right space. So they probably kind of felt like they were being talked back to, possibly they were, maybe raise the spirits of the dead in sort of a form of necromancy so that they can communicate with them. That could have possibly happened as well. It's a very deep area of study. We don't have a formal ritual layout for an utaseta or for a mound sit anymore. But we do them, and you do them you just kind of make up the ritual as you go, and you do them in a way that that makes sense to you, where nobody gets hurt, and you actually provide for your own safety in the process. Because you don't want to go out and mound sit and get in trouble or get hurt or get stung by a scorpion or something and not have somebody checking in on you. So when we did ours, my wife, she would check in on me, and she didn't come into the circle. If our water jug was empty, we set it outside the vey, and she would come by and just kind of grab it and leave and go change it. And once in a while, she would just kind of lurk off in the periphery and just kind of keep an eye on us and make sure everything's good. And then you just wander away. So she could observe us without interacting with us in any way. And that was kind of a cool way to do it. But we didn't really have a formula for it. So I guess every effort to take that level of a ritual should kind of be something you craft on your own, knowing that the idea is that you are the sacrifice. You are sacrificing your time, and in our case, food, and any kind of comfort in exchange for inspiration or whatever your goal is for the utaseta. So I want to talk about, so we covered basically the three rituals here, and that would be the bloat, the sumbel, and the utaseta. There's more. You can, of course, do rune work. That's sort of a ritual. Almost anything can be considered a ritual. We absolutely do feast blessings. When we have our formal feasts, we do a ritual of gratitude, which is we pass a gratitude stone around and we all give something that we're grateful for. And we can be grateful for the intervention of a god, or we can be grateful for the intervention of a kinsman, or we can be just grateful that something happened and we don't know why. That it was just good. But the idea is just it was gratitude itself, and the way that we do it is in itself a ritual, which is really cool. And so when you kind of get comfortable with rituals anyway, but then people draw a big line between the daily rituals like making coffee and saying thank you, and then they draw that line and they don't do the rituals to go venerate the gods. But it's all just a ritual, and it's just as easy when you do it enough, when you form this sort of a habit of this. Like we hold bloat, formal kindred bloat, every month. Now, every month there's a bloat and a gathering and a feast, but sometimes that feast is just hot dogs, and sometimes we don't even sumbel. Sometimes we do craft. Our crafting is a ritual. It's a ritual without any form. So the way we do it, and we go out and we're like, hey, we made this thing, let's all get together and make it. It's a ritual in the way that we're sharing. We're sharing skills, we're sharing knowledge, we're sharing stories, we're engaging, we're building our friendships. All of these things are happening while we're building crafts, while we're doing these things. So it would absolutely classify as a ritual, just not a formal ritual with an outline and a structure. So we have rituals in everything that we do all day, every day. One thing I want to cover, like I had a question on, I think on YouTube. So I'll just answer this question, but they asked if I could clarify the words that I use when I actually open a bloat, because they're not in the flyer, they're not in the things. Now, remember what I said is that this bloat, my bloat structure, I was told that it's very similar to wording and everything the way that they do it in Iceland, but it's also similar to the way a lot of pagan groups around the country do it. And it's funny because I have seen people, I've seen just regular bloat, and they use the same verbiage when they open the corners and they do their things. And that is helgeveitur og hindra al iska. It doesn't translate directly. Now, maybe somebody from Iceland or whatever can tell me, or somebody who knows Old Norse, because I know this phrase initially came from Iceland. But helgevei would be a sacred space, or the vei. The vei is a sacred space. Essentially, the line is, protect this sacred space and keep it safe from evil. That's what helgeveitur og hindra al iska. Keep it safe from evil, or safe from all ill, free of evil. So the words don't actually translate over well, but essentially what it is protect this sacred space, and I guess by some translators it'll say protect the sacred space and all in it, and protect it from evil or whatever. So that's essentially what it says. I'm not a linguist. I don't speak any other languages, although I'm working on Swedish, which this isn't. That's what it means, and that's where it came from. I got it through the Gothi who mentored me. He got it through the Gothi who mentored him. It's similar to what is said in Iceland, but they probably say it in Icelandic. But the idea is that, and you don't even have to say it that way. You can just say, welcome spirits of the north, protect the sacred space and all within it. Or as we say, because I generally say it, helgeveitur og hindra al iska, and then I say, form a shield wall and protect the sacred space. So that's essentially what it means, but you can just say it in English. Like, the gods understand English. I had some trolls telling me, like, you gotta speak Norwegian or Icelandic. The gods don't understand English. Of course they understand English. Of course they do. That's one of the most absurd statements I've ever heard anybody say. The gods don't understand English. You have to say it in Icelandic. That's not true. The routine of saying it like that is part of to me, it's a calling card. The way I say it, the way I open, the way I do it, they're like, oh, that's the Northwoods. Let's go see what they got for us today. That's kind of how it is. So your opener is generally about the only part that's rehearsed, and other than the structure of it. And to say it the same way and to have the same opener every time is almost a calling card. It's almost like saying, hey, it's me again. You guys want to come down here and we can offer you some meat or something? So that's sort of how I look at it. So one thing I want to kind of clarify here, at least these are my definitions, is I want to talk about the difference between a sacrifice and an offering. So the clearest way that I've been able to say it, and I use the words interchangeably, so don't get me wrong there. I do use the words interchangeably because that's how our language works. But I think if you really got into it, if I said an offering or a sacrifice, there is a difference. And a sacrifice would be giving something up. I'm sitting here talking to you and enjoying a cup of coffee, but if I was to dump this coffee out, I would be sacrificing it. I'm giving it up. This is the example I use for most everybody else. If I meet you for the first time and I offer you my hand, and shake your hand, and I'm like, hey man, nice to meet you. So I'm giving you a gesture of friendship and goodwill, the handshake. I am offering you my hand of friendship, but it doesn't cost me anything and it doesn't cost you anything. But if I say, oh man, nice to meet you, I offer you a handshake, hey, let's go to lunch, my treat. And I go and I buy lunch and buy a couple of beers or whatever, or we'll just say lunch. So I buy lunch for you. Now I've made a sacrifice. I've sacrificed my time. I've sacrificed my attention. You don't get either of those back. And I sacrificed my money to purchase a lunch for you. So that is a true sacrifice because I'm giving something up that I would otherwise have. So I've made a sacrifice. And then in the way it's supposed to work is I purchased a lunch and then you buy us a couple of beers at the bar so we can wash down that lunch and have a little bit more conversation. So now you have sacrificed a gift for a gift because you used your money, your time, your effort. You have sacrificed it to me to sit down and enjoy that beer with me. And then We can offer each other our hand in friendship again as we shake hands and depart. I hope that kind of clears it up a little bit, the difference between an offering and a sacrifice. And that's why I say something like burning incense for Freya is a great offering. It builds goodwill, it builds community, but it doesn't cost you anything because you bought the incense to burn it. It is still serving its purpose, which is to burn and make your house smell good or your space smell good. You're not sacrificing it to anybody. If you were to sacrifice an incense to a god, you would not burn it because that's what it was designed for, and you get a benefit from it. If you were to sacrifice it to them, you would flush it down the toilet or throw it in the trash. That would be the sacrifice. The sacrifice is that you gave hard-earned money and effort to put into it, and then you didn't get to use it because you sacrificed it. But if you offered it, then you would burn it. And it would be an offering, and an offering doesn't carry the same weight. Plus, an offering does not automatically initiate the gift for a gift cycle like a sacrifice would. A sacrifice, I give to you, you are karmically obligated to give back, to fair exchange, a gift for a gift. That doesn't necessarily hold true. So if I light an incense for Odin, I don't expect that Odin is going to have to come and do something for me, recompense for the offering. Okay, it just doesn't. They don't work the same. I don't know if I'm made that clear or if I made that more complicated, but to me, that's the way that I look at it. Now, you can look at it however you want. If to you and the way that you exchange with your deities, if lighting an incense is all you ever need to do, then that's fine. But the act of actually performing ritual is, for one, it's historic. Now, we might not know historically exactly how it was done, but we do know historically that it was done. So those that will sit around and read and say, well, we don't perform ritual because we don't know exactly how it was done. Well, the truth is everybody did it differently. And what they didn't do was sit around reading books and pontificate about ritual. They went out and they did ritual. So you could say that the historic types that don't do ritual because they don't have all the key components are not the living history of it. The living history are the people who do it regardless if they have the key components and just make it work, make it happen, and learn as they go, as they build their own techniques and they build their own rituals and they build their own practice based on as much historic information and evidence as they can find, but they don't let the lack of that hold them back. So that's really the key for ritual, is to go out and just do it. Just get it under your belt, make some mistakes. I can't imagine that the gods would hold anything against you because you made a mistake during ritual, because you did it wrong, because they know that you have to practice, you have to learn, you have to train. What do you think the warriors are doing in Valhalla? They are training, they are dying, and they are fighting another day. Their job in Valhalla is to feast and drink and train. And why do they train? Because the gods know that you can't get it right the first time, that it takes repetition, it takes practice. So if nothing else, the model of the Einherjar in Valhalla should be enough to instigate for you to go out and perform ritual and know that the gods expect you to get it wrong until you can get it right. Or find your own rhythm and routine for the process. Now, I mentioned earlier that I said ritual is a common, normal, everyday occurrence. So here's some ideas that you probably don't. Birthday candles. Birthday candles are a ritual. The observance is the birthday, but the cake and the ice cream and the candles is the ritual. And everybody does it. They don't have any issues with it at all. A baptism, or in our case, an osavatni, those are rituals. A wedding ceremony, that is a ritual. And it's not even a religious one. Like the Christians made it religious, but a wedding wasn't a religious ceremony. It didn't necessarily have to involve the gods. And there would probably be a bloat and there would be these things that went on, but the wedding itself was just a civil contract. It didn't involve the gods any more than me buying land from you involved the gods. Now, I might involve the gods if I'm devout. You might involve the gods if you're devout. Or if neither of us devout, they might not be involved in it at all. A wedding was separate in that sort of an instance. It was a contractual exchange. It was not a religious exchange. But it's still a ritual. There was still a ritual involved in it. In the case of a wedding, in the Viking Age, it was, suing for the approval of the kinsman to take the woman and the bartering for the bride price, and there's this whole ritual that goes with it. And in a lot of cases, if that ritual wasn't performed, if you didn't go to the kinsman, barter for the bride price, that if you just grabbed some maiden and you two fell in love and you ran off and you eloped, not only would that be an illegal wedding, the kinsman would probably come after you, and your children were not entitled to your inheritance because your wedding was illegitimate. There's definitely a ritual, and that ritual held weight, like legal weight, in the old days. And the ritual of swearing an oath, like nowadays we swear an oath on a Bible, right, in court, that came from swearing an oath on the oath ring. The ritual of swearing an oath on an oath ring, because we get attached to our rituals. And what happened was when Iceland and the Nordic countries were converted to Christianity, they no longer required an oath ring, that whole pagan thing. They no longer required that for trials, for courts. But the Norsemen couldn't get their heads around, how do they know if you're telling the truth if you didn't swear it on a ring? So they had to come up with a replacement for the ring, and that replacement was the Holy Bible. So you got to put your hand on the Bible and swear to the Lord that you're telling the truth, as opposed to putting your hand on a ring or a weapon or a shield or a stone and swearing your oath in that respect. So it's a replacement, and I don't even think it's a very suitable replacement, but it is, because they just couldn't push on. They couldn't do the same thing without the ritual that was attached to it. So we have other daily routines and habits are a ritual. Graduation from high school is a ritual. It's an occasion, but there's the ritual to it is the walking out, the shaking your hand, the receiving your diploma, the speeches, the clothing, the gear, dressing for ritual, all of that. All of that is ritualistic. Even in hunting, I know I do it, and most of the hunters I know do it, but whenever I take down an animal, I always put my hands on it, and I thank it for the sacrifice that it made to feed my family. Maybe it wasn't a willing sacrifice, but it's still a sacrifice. And I honor the animal with that. And I know some people they honor with, they take a bite out of heart, or they put blood under, the little blood on your face. There's all these little things that people do that become family rituals or regional rituals or practices in the hunting community. Maybe it just brings up kind of that feeling of that old hunter-gatherer mindset when we were, living on the savannah and hunting lions and stuff with spears. So maybe it just kind of ignites that sort of a feeling, but it's still a ritual. It's still ritualistic in its beginnings, and it's even now. Maybe it's not a full ritual, but it's symbolic of a past ritual that we just can't let go. It's ingrained in us. And like I said, even the way that I make my coffee, when I make coffee, the way that I make it is a ritual. So what do we get for ritual? If we're going to ritual and we're sacrificing stuff, essentially giving stuff up, and we're not allowed to ask for anything, what are we getting? Why are we even bothering? Why do we do it? The act of performing ritual actually reduces anxiety, especially in today's world where everything is a disaster. Everything's going wrong. Turn on the news for 10 minutes and I'm sure you'll find a reason to be depressed. In that circumstance where everything's a mess, ritual is one of the things that we can, it's comfort, it's predictable, it's procedural. And we can go into ritual and we can come out of it feeling better because we feel like we're making a difference. Like we're making a sacrifice to the gods. We're saying, thank you for the intervention. Thank you for making these things happen. Thank you for making things a little bit easier in this really hard time. And you come out of that feeling good. It feels good to say thank you. It always feels good to say thank you, or people wouldn't say it. At least I always like to say, thank you to people who help me out, people who do good things for me, make my life easier. They deserve a thank you, and I give them a thank you for that. And to say thank you feels good. So to say thank you to the gods also feels good, and that reduces anxiety, especially over stressful situations that you can't control. It's always nice to be able to just do a quick ritual, hey, I'm going into this completely unprepared, into this strange situation that I've never been in before. If you could just keep my mind in the game and keep me motivated and inspired and safe, I would consider that a win, and then pour out your little offering, and that makes you feel, it limits stress in your system because it makes you feel like you had some control, like you did something to make your situation better when you were in a situation which otherwise would have no control over. So ritual is really good for that. And like some of the other examples I gave, we don't want to give up our rituals. We don't want to stop doing the things that we've done for millennia. we want to keep doing those same things because the practice of doing them makes everything else feel like it's in the right place. Another great byproduct of performing ritual is it builds community. Like I said, the ritual of our craft, our ritual of bloat, our ritual of sumbel, even our ritual of utasetta, where it's me and my son sitting out there alone and talking about runes and the gods and things that we can do to live a better life. That builds community. That gets us stronger. It builds that relationship tighter. The act of gathering together and performing ritual builds community. It builds kinship. And that's really a really major goal of it, is to not only honor the gods, but to honor each other and build kinship and frith and build a lasting relationship between us. Now, sometimes those relationships fall apart. Nothing is written in stone like that. But for the time that we are together, the time that we are communing and being kinsmen, we get stronger, better relationship because we're doing ritual together. And lastly, I think probably one of the biggest examples of doing rituals is it strengthens your faith. So, like, how committed are you to the faith if you don't do it? Like, how committed is the Christian next door who never goes to church or goes on Easter and Christmas? How committed are they really? Do they sit around and read the Bible? Do they do these things? Probably not. They probably just show up when they're supposed to because that's the routine and that's the ritual that they're used to, and it just wouldn't feel right if they didn't do it. We know plenty of people like that. But in heathenry, we should do better. We should work harder, and we should show how committed we are to our path, especially to the new heathens. We should show them that there is a practice here. It's not, you don't just get to say, well, I mean, you can if you want, like you can do whatever the hell you want, but you don't get to throw on a hammer and be like, I'm a pagan, so I don't have to do anything. I've seen one of the most ignorant comments I've ever seen on Facebook, and it was a young pagan. This young heathen said that their religion gives them the authority to steal from Christians and just some random, just asinine bullshit like that. Like, I've read plenty of stuff, and there's nothing that gives anybody the authority to take from another. Nothing in any of the books that I've read. There are examples through history where those have happened, raids and whatnot, but those are examples of a whole different time in the living history of this planet. It is not just because the Vikings did it 1,000 years ago and their gods condemned it or condoned it, doesn't mean that you can go loot some hillbilly's truck just because he's a Christian and you're a pagan. Like, let's really, really think on the things that we say so we don't look so stupid in the eyes of our community. Let's help educate everybody, especially those young pagans who think that this is a ticket to go do whatever you want to do. Because nobody's going to stop you. That's the problem. Nobody's going to say you're doing it wrong. They're just going to be like, well, if that's your practice, that's your practice. But it makes everybody look bad because you know that saying things like that, those are the people who get the loudest voice. That particular person who said that was probably seen by more people than will ever see this podcast, because that's just how things work. The bad stuff spreads like wildfire, and the good stuff, it's hard to get off the ground. Take that for what it's worth, but be the educator. Now, the last thing I really want to say on ritual is that we can create new rituals. If you have circumstances where you're doing something that was perhaps not done in ancient times, it doesn't mean that you can't perform a ritual for it. Now, I have a personal ritual of blessing my mead when I pitch the yeast, when I give it life. When I put life in the batch, I bless it. There is zero ancient accounts of that happening, of them brewing a batch of mead or beer and blessing it with a hammer to Odin or Thor. Zero accounts that I've read, and I've read a lot of books. There's been no examples of that ever happening. But that doesn't mean that I'm doing it wrong. It doesn't mean that I can't do that. It doesn't mean that I can't create my own rituals. They mean something to me. In fact, if I was to brew a batch of mead and not bless it, it would feel it would bother me like you couldn't understand. I would have to go back eventually and then just bless the thing just to get it out of my system, because we are creatures of habit and we are creatures of ritual. So craft your rituals of your life so that they honor the gods and that they honor your folk, and you'll be doing it right. But those key rituals, those bloats, those sumbels, don't be intimidated. Don't be too intimidated to just dive in and do it. And like I said, I've got these flyers I put out just for you guys. Download them for free, print off multiple copies, give them to your friends, leave them at the library, put them in the church. I don't care. Put them out there, and also point to the back of it. Tell them that you can scan that little thing right there. It'll take you to this YouTube channel right here, and then you can see how to use this thing effectively and efficiently if you want. And of course, the goal is not for you to memorize my flyer and do that the rest of your life. The goal is to take that as a blueprint and build your house with it. This is just a blueprint, and you can redraw the blueprint. You can erase walls and put new ones in. You can add an extra bathroom. You can do anything you want. Take this blueprint and build your house with it. That way you're less intimidated to just go out and start doing it. Start doing it. If things that I do don't feel right, then don't do them. It's that simple. Just don't do them. Incorporate something else. Create something else. Do it your way. And then everybody's better for it. You will build community, and you will have a much better, more fulfilling practice. And don't give air to the people that say that the way that you do it is not historic, okay? Because sitting around, reading books, and doing nothing is also not historic. So you can give it right back to them. Historically, people would have done. They would have taken action. They would have done something in replace of doing nothing. They did not sit around on the couch. They did not play video games. They worked. They got up in the morning. They milked the cows. They, collected eggs. They farmed the land. They did the things. And if they didn't know how to do the thing, they did it anyway. And they did it wrong. And they failed a couple of times until they figured out a good method. And when they did figure out a good method, they taught someone else how to do it. And there it went. And that's how civilizations evolved into the modern era. We wouldn't have the life we have and the comforts and the ease that we have right now if we had not made some mistakes, learned it, and then went through the ritual of sharing that information and repeating that practice over and over to refine it and make it something that we could actually work with. That is why we live in the information age, not in the Viking age. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got something good out of it. If you did, absolutely please share this with your family and friends. Of course, there is a video component on this with a really cool background. It's just me running my jib with headphones on and a cool background, but it's on YouTube anyway, so you can watch it if you want to see my smiling face. And if not, if you've got more important things to do, it's going to be on Anchor and Spotify. As I build a few more episodes in my catalog, then I'll start applying for membership on other platforms such as iTunes and things like that. We'll get there down the road. Don't forget to visit my website, survivalhardwarellc.com. Check out some cool handmade goods made by myself and my wife, and some stuff there that my kids made as well. And also go there and download your free flyer on bloat, on the rituals of Asatru, and your flyer on frequently asked questions in Asatru. So equip yourself, put some bullets in your magazine, and be ready and equipped to deal with the haters, because they're out there and they're looking for a fight. All right then, hope you enjoyed that. I am Bodvar, the chieftain and Gothi of the Northwoods Kindred. This has been the Northwoods Kindred Podcast, and I will see you on the next one. Thorvigi, my friends.